All right, hello everyone and welcome. I'd like to get started here and introduce our speaker, which is Sandi Star from Sandi Star Wellness. This is a wellness webinar, and welcome, Sandi. Thank you for coming today. Sandi graduated from the Natural Healing Institute of Naturopathy and with the following certifications: Holistic Health Practitioner, Clinical Nutrition, Clinical Mastered Herbology, Aromatherapy, and has a bachelor's degree in communication. And with that, she's also a proud member of the American Holistic Healthcare Association. Sandi specializes in functional nutrition as well as a focus on addressing the underlying triggering factors of inflammation by incorporating a comprehensive evaluation and needed laboratory testing. Sandi's primary focus is treating and preventing disease and dependency on pharmaceuticals. So I'd like to welcome Sandi Star.
Thank you. Hello. Good to see everybody. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, see if I can do this. Okay, so I'm going to start from the beginning. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay. All right. I think everybody can see, right? Yes? Okay. Okay. So I'm glad to be here today. I'm glad you're on. So just wanted to share some info on inflammation. So I already did the introduction, so I don't need to tell you anything more about me. But I do want to share that what I've successfully gone through is I've lost 60 pounds. And this was many, many years ago, and I've been able to keep it off for all these years. So I do help people with weight loss quite a bit. I've had my autoimmune, which I was diagnosed almost 20 years ago, in remission for a long time. I've been off pharmaceuticals. I was on them for quite a while for just pain management, all kinds of stuff. I've healed chronic migraines I had since I was a child. And then also a lot of GI disorders. So these are some of the areas that I'm really passionate about helping people with, because I know how debilitating it can be. It was very much for me. So I am an author as well. This is a book I wrote to help people transition into a gluten-free diet in a healthy way, but it also goes through the gluten story, why nobody should be eating it, how toxic it is these days, but also just talks about the system, the body deficiencies that can happen. So a lot goes on in the body. Disclaimer, of course, I'm not giving any treatments today, just some insight. So we're going to be looking at inflammation, immune system, and which is in our gut, and a holistic approach to wellness, and then supplementation. So I think that's important to chat about too, especially when people self-medicate all the time with supplements, and then also when they're on pharmaceuticals, it's important to know what you should be supplementing or shouldn't. So acute inflammation, I mean, that's basically a controlled inflammatory response. So if you cut your finger, you're going to get that inflammation, and that's a good thing. You want your body to be going to that point, getting rid of any toxins, any infections, or any tissue damage, and heal that area. So that's a good thing, and our bodies are made for this kind of inflammatory response, right? So it's just the body's attempt to heal itself. What happens with inflammation, it can become chronic, and this is where we get some systemic things that go on in the body and cause other issues like autoimmune. The body attacks healthy tissue. Anything that's untreated, like an infection, if it's untreated and you have a low-grade infection, you're not going to be able to heal until we address that root cause, that trigger that's happening all the time. And it takes the attention away from the body to be balanced, because it's always trying to fix something, right? So we want to have, obviously, balance in our body, right? So a lot of us tend to get this chronic inflammation, and it's causing a lot of disorders. So we don't want long-term, right? And things contribute to that. A poor diet is a huge issue in our country as far as causing inflammation. So some of the symptoms from inflammation, people can have anxiety, believe it or not, even GI issues like small intestinal bacteria overgrowth or candida. So these are infections. or imbalances. Even symptoms like constipation, that's an inflammatory response, right? So you think about things that can happen in the body when you have chronic inflammation, diabetes, there's all kinds of things that can happen. So autoimmune is a big one. Stress, of course, leaky gut, which I'll talk about. These are the diseases. So instead of saying disease, it's a dis-ease in the body is really what disease is, right? So from this chronic inflammation, we get things like diabetes, allergies, right? We get pretty bad inflammatory responses. So I see somebody trying to come in. Cancers, right? Cancers is another way the body attacks itself, right? It gets confused and then we end up getting these tumors and growths and things like that. So it's a problem. Obesity is another thing that stems from inflammation. So, and of course, chronic injuries that haven't healed, GI disorders like colitis and Crohn's, things like that. So there's a whole lot more than this, but this just gives you an idea. So, sorry, Kathy, I think people are trying to get in. Maybe you can keep an eye on that unless you need to. Okay, so we really are in a crisis, and this is something I've been really just passionate about getting out there, is creating awareness and these numbers that are really getting worse and worse in our country. Diabetes, 1 in 10 people, and 90 to 95% is type 2, which is diet and lifestyle related. So yes, there are some genetic diabetes, there are some that, you know, need insulin and that type of thing, but a lot of the diabetes and pre-diabetes that we're seeing is definitely tied into our lifestyle, and that includes, you know, sedentary diet, stress, things like that. High blood pressure affects 46% of adults. That's pretty high number. And high blood pressure, obviously all of these tie into heart disease. Obesity, this has become an epidemic. It's reaching 40% now for obesity, and 70% of America is overweight. And a lot of that is from inflammation and just the body not being able to process things. So it's not, I mean, diet's huge, but there's other factors, and I'll bring those up too. The other thing too that kind of is alarming and something that we need to really look at is the obesity in our children. And so because of this all passing down in the habits, if you will, in the food system, there's a lot of children that are obese and overweight, but they're also experiencing adult diseases. I mean, I've had an 8-year-old that had high cholesterol. I mean, had cholesterol issues at 8. So these kinds of things are kind of scary because you think about what that's going to happen when they turn 20 or 40, right? And then just a little on COVID, because I know we're right in this crisis. We're hoping to get out of it soon. It's affected everybody's lives. So what they did a study in New York with 5,700 people. And what they found was that there's a huge percent, actually 94% had underlying health conditions. They had the diabetes, they had the obesity, and then they had the high blood pressure. So only 6% did not have these underlying conditions. And so what happens is the body responds differently. It's more of a reaction. And so this was an interesting study. So again, only 6% had no other conditions. So again, these are preventable. In most cases, these are preventable. These are things we shouldn't be living with because the body isn't meant to have these diseases, right? So prescriptions, I just want to mention a little bit about this because, you know, our country kind of goes to prescriptions first to mask a symptom, but they don't go underneath and say, what's going on underneath? Is there an infection? Is there, you know, toxic overload? Is there an allergy? What's going on in the body that we need to address? They have their place. They've saved my life a few times, but it's not the first thing to go to when you have a holistic or integrative approach to wellness. So, and the reason I bring this up is because most people are on, you know, 3 in 5 American adults, right? Now they're getting on 5 or more. It's just doubling. It's just getting more and more. If you look at 3.9 billion prescriptions, 2009, and then 2016, 4.45. So 3,200 prescriptions written per month per pharmacy in the US. So it's a moneymaker for sure, right? And again, I'm not against these. I'm against using them in place of a holistic, natural approach to healing and to being preventative so that you don't have to get to this point where you're on a bunch of meds. So gut health is really important. This is one of my favorite areas. And the first place I go when I work with somebody is gut health. It's huge, right? So when we look at our gut, that's our immune system. 3/4 of our immune system is in our gut. We have more neurotransmitters in our gut than our brain. And so there is definitely connection, and a lot goes on in our GI. Stress plays a role, mental, emotional health. There is a gut-brain connection, like I said, and I've noticed people with neurological things that are going on, if we heal up the gut, sometimes they can even go off of some of these meds. I've had that happen. So that's nice, right? Diet is critical, of course. Sleep and exercise, these are lifestyle things that we have balance. The immunity and genetics can play a role, of course, and the microbiome is your footprint, if you will. These are all the bacteria, and the more diverse, the better. I'm finding on some of these stool panels I do, there's one I use that's called Gut Zoomer, and it looks at the specific microbiome, kind of the balance. And a lot of times when we have deficiencies and like only a certain amount of the bugs and not a variety, those are all tied to these systemic conditions that we can get. So balance is critical in the gut. And then of course, digestion, it doesn't just happen in the stomach, right? There's a lot of organs involved, right? You start digestion as soon as you look at the food, right? Sometimes when it looks really good, you salivate, right? And we're supposed to, it's a good thing. So the stomach is where a lot of the acids are. It needs to be high acid, and there's a lot of people that have low acid, then they end up getting GERD. It's kind of the opposite of what you think. As we get older, we lose stomach acid, so sometimes it becomes harder to break down food, and so there are supplementations for that, especially with GERD. We have to address that. Liver is critical. That's our filter for everything, and that our liver gets ignored a lot. So liver support's really important. Gallbladder, a lot of people have that removed, right? So then the liver has to put the bile into the small intestine, and there's no reservoir for it to hold, and so there's stress. And so depending on what parts people have had taken out or are compromised, there's things that we have to do to support that, balance it out, and the diet that ties into that. So most all the digestion happens in the small intestine. So it's a really important place to have balance. The colon, of course, you're going to have a lot of the bacteria in the colon, and they have to be separate. And sometimes when you get bacteria from the colon into the small intestine, you get SIBO. That's that intestinal bacteria overgrowth. So some people get bloating right after they eat, or they ferment when they're not supposed to. So that's a pretty common thing that's out there, is SIBO for sure. Okay, so this is what imbalance looks like, right? This guy on the left probably has diabetes, and that's just that inability to digest well, and just a lot of sugar in the diet, things like that can really play a role in this. So that's basically like candida, things like that, dysbiosis, imbalance. So things that influence this in our gut, antibiotics is a huge one. You could do one round of antibiotics, and it could take 2 years for your system to kind of get balanced again. And so I have a protocol when somebody has to take antibiotics. There's specific bacteria that we want to take. Saccharomyces boulardii is one strain that I give that's a probiotic, but it helps fight candida. And so candida is that yeast overgrowth that tends to grow back fast after a round of antibiotics. So then women get UTIs a lot, yeast infections, and men can get foot fungus, jock itch, things like that. We can get skin disorders. That's the gut screaming. So even even women on the pill, things like that can affect the balance. H. pylori, which is an infection, stress, right? Pesticides in the food. I'll talk about the dirty dozen, clean 15 in a little bit. And sugar in the diet is such a huge thing. So I'll talk about sugar too, because it really does affect us, and too much is pretty hard on the system. But there's other factors too, right? Chemicals in the drinking water. There's a lot of things that can affect our gut balance, right, and kill those off. So, not sure if you guys have heard of leaky gut, but it really is leaky gut. So this is your small intestine, and you have these little villi hairs on the top. They're supposed to be like that because they pull nutrients in. Somebody with celiac, for example, that will be blunt and everything goes right through them. That's why they get super sick when they have celiac. So the tight junctions, you can see on the one side, that's how it's supposed to be, that's healthy. On the right, it's inflamed, and these tight junctions open up, and they're not supposed to. So what happens, normally you're supposed to get the micro and macronutrients into the bloodstream once they're processed in the intestine. But what happens with leaky gut is you get undigested food and toxins into the bloodstream. And that's what causes an inflammatory response. And so that's when people start getting sensitive to smells, brain fog. It's just constantly inflamed, right? You get that systemic inflammation. And then you get metabolic dysfunctions, even diabetes, things like that. So you look at the core, that's making sure the gut's working optimally. If not, you could have leaky gut. So this is something we look at. I test on a stool panel for zonulin, which is the protein that releases and makes you get leaky gut, basically. But it's all obviously lifestyle and all of that ties into it. But that's what turns on and stays on. So we have to make sure we heal that. This is when you see people that get a lot of food sensitivities. We do a panel and they've got all kinds of stuff coming up. Well, we know to go in and heal that gut, make sure it's put back together, if you will. And also malabsorption can happen for sure. I had leaky gut when I had all the other stuff going on, and it was not fun, not good at all. So these are things that tie in to leaky gut, right? When you have that going on, depression. A lot of the neurological things that happen are tied into the gut. We know that. There's New England Journal of Medicine has done studies on that. Diabetes is tied, autoimmune is all tied into that. I had Sjogren's, that's what I was diagnosed with, and that's where the body attacks your own moisture production. And so I almost went blind. It was pretty bad. And then not to mention my body just dehydrating all the time. So joint pain, there's all kinds of things that tie in with that. And so we want to make sure the body's not attacking itself. But again, it all ties to the gut. And I know that some of the gut issues can be your genes can play a role in that. And so it's having to work through the genes and not let them express the way they think they want to express. We want to make sure that they're not, the bad ones aren't expressing. And so it does definitely tie into the gut. Okay. So a balanced life. We all want a balanced life. It's a daily thing, right? So some of the things we're not doing is we're really not addressing the root cause, the underlying triggers, because when you look at healing, you want to remove those. Because once you remove those, then you can start healing and building on that. But until you remove those, like I mentioned before, infections, people with Lyme's disease, things like that. If you don't address that, then it's always going to be there in the way, right? So you may feel a little better, but you're not going to heal completely. Again, the prescriptions, I think that this is an issue, really not, maybe some people taking too many, and then you take one, and then you have to take another one because it has to counter this one. But also keep in mind with medications, for example, if you're on cholesterol medication, a statin, it actually blocks that whole pathway. And so you actually get deficient in CoQ10, which is really important. So you want to supplement CoQ10. So some of the things I do is I will work through supplements, even if I just do that with somebody, to make sure they're doing the right thing and not doing too much, because that can be confusing on the body too if we take too many. The other thing too is our environment, as we know, is just crazy. We're exposed to 700,000 different toxins a day. And that doesn't even include the toxins on our food. So just in our environment, now think about the liver, right? Think about how we have to process all of this. So there you go, drink some water, Michelle. So water is gonna be critical, right? I'll talk about that for sure. And so we wanna make sure we're exercising and sweating and getting rid of these toxins and watching what we're surrounding ourselves with, what we're putting on our bodies, in our bodies, all of that matters. It makes a big difference. And then being preventative, right? Just preventative medicine, a functional approach, not waiting till it's too late, right? But really doing things every day to balance ourselves the best we can, really. And then we're really sometimes not looking at the big picture, right? It can be overwhelming. Like if you have a goal to, I don't know, fix your autoimmune, it's overwhelming. I've been there. I would get so discouraged because I felt like I had this huge road ahead of me and I had so many things to fix. But if you just like take bites and work with somebody to really get you and look at the most important thing to work at first, it's those layers. And we're always peeling that onion. I mean, every single day. It's just, that's what we have to do. So, but it's definitely doable. So building a healthy foundation. So again, back to this root cause is we got to look at what's really going on underneath that current, right? And know your numbers, know your blood pressure, know your cholesterol, your blood sugar. A1C is like a balance, like a 2-week kind of average, which is better than just doing a glucose test because that can be different whatever day you do it. You want that average. I see those numbers high in a lot of people. D3 is really important. That's so huge for our immune system, even for bone health. I mean, it's just D3. They also found with this COVID, the people that had the bad reactions were deficient in D3. And most labs I look at, the D3 is low, no matter how much sunshine you get, because you got to remember it has to still go through the liver and process. And so when our liver or system's off, we're not absorbing the D3. So we need to supplement it. And again, most people I've seen are in the 30s. And then I'll talk about D3 because I want to highlight that. Ideal weight. Okay, it's your ideal weight. It's not somebody else's weight. It's where you feel good, where you have energy, where you can move and not be in pain, right? When I was heavy, I didn't feel good. And I got up and that was like the first thing I thought of and the last thing I thought of, and I just wasn't feeling well. And it really does mess with your mind. So it's just about, you know, the better we are to our body, the more we're going to feel good mentally. Mindset's critical too. Whole food diet, I'll talk about that a little bit. Intermittent fasting is pretty cool too. Most people know what that is. It's basically going without food for a certain amount of time. So like, for example, probably the safest thing to start out would be the 14 to 16 hour gap. So after dinner and then eat the next day, 14, 16 hours later. Studies have shown this is really beneficial for diabetes, actually, because it will reset. Your body's got to use what's in there, right? So it's also really good, almost like a detox too. It helps the GI get some rest. And so intermittent fasting is really good. There's many ways to do it. The other one, you could do 5 days with normal calories, normal, food, and then 2 days with a very low calorie, like maybe 500 or 600 calories for 2 days. But like kind of really work with somebody on that, make sure you're doing it, where you feel good, right? So I would always start with maybe a 12-hour gap and then work your way up because that's usually easier to do. Sugar, processed foods, we kind of know this, but we got to be reminded all the time, right? I mean, I'm a snacker. I have to be really careful. I pick my poison, if you will. And so it's that kind of 80-20 rule. I think I mentioned that coming up. Exercise daily and stay active. So exercise doesn't mean that you got to go run a marathon. Honestly, you can hurt yourself just as much by exercising too much as not exercising. And there's that happy balance, right? Especially if you have autoimmune or if you have, you know, pains like knee pain or thing, you know, you've got to find kind of a routine that works for you. Even if it's dance, it doesn't matter. It's what gets you moving, sweating, bringing those, you know, endorphins out. It's just really, really important to do some type of exercise and staying active. Water, I'm bringing it up again. I got a slide coming up for water, how important it is, but we should be drinking half our ideal body weight in ounces a day. So if you weigh 150 pounds, you should drink 75 ounces a day. And that's good water. That's like not tap water, usually not your typical bottled water, that cheap stuff, but like a good, clean water. And then stress, of course, we need to manage stress. It's super, super important. We're always going to have stress, always, but it's how we perceive things. Like, is the glass half full or half empty? You know, I've been on both sides of that. And I've noticed a huge difference when I kind of just step back and just, okay, is this a first world problem? You know, kind of thing, right? So really looking how to manage stress and being able to talk about it with people too, being able to have those people. Mindset, we really are who we say we are. Mindset's critical, and I work on that with people. It's so important to be in the right mindset, you know, right affirmations, like do things that make you really grounded and live in purpose. So, so important. Plays a huge role in how we move forward with our health plans, our wellness journey. This is important. We look at the whole picture. So it's about all our areas of our life, right? It's the physical, of course, spiritual, mind, like, are we challenging ourselves, right? Do we have purpose? Are we social, right? Environment, emotional health, even financial, it's important. I mean, even in the financial, people, they kind of like put their health on the back burner, and instead of like investing in preventative measures and maybe better food, things like that. Or putting money aside to get labs done or whatever that is, right? So eating healthy is critical, as we know. I mean, look how pretty that food is, right? Okay, so we want to eat a variety of whole foods. Now, what people tend to do is eat the same thing over and over. This is just kind of humans. That's what we do. But to have as much variety as possible, so you're getting your micro and macronutrients, right? You're getting more of a variety. Super, super important. Vegetables are the most important thing. Above all, even fruit, I think, vegetables are critical, and a variety of them. Fiber is really, really important, and most people get about half of what we should. So fiber is really important, and I'll have a slide on that. Lean proteins, and it's not always animal protein, right? We don't have to think of animals when we think of protein, but I'll get to that slide too. Good fats are super important. I'll have a slide on that. And then again, your water intake. So for your sugar, this does not include fruit. You should be around 25 grams a day for ladies, usually 35, maybe 45 for men, depends on activity. So 25 grams, so really challenge you to look at labels, even bars, like healthy bars, you know, anything packaged usually, right, of course, to look at those grams, because they add up so fast. I mean, one bar you think is healthy can have, you know, 15, 20 grams of sugar. So there's your whole day, right? So just really watching the sugar. Now we say 80-20 rule, right? 80% just eat good stuff, 20% have fun, you know, depending on where you're at with the healing process, but we have to live, right? And we don't want to be discouraged in a wellness plan. So, okay, here's my slide on hydration, benefits of water. So people that have constipation, the first thing I ask is, how much water do you drink? How much fiber do you eat, right? And just naturally, that can make a huge difference. Exercise can make a difference, right? So hydration, it clears toxins, helps your skin, it helps your joints, fat metabolism. So you should drink your water in between meals for the most part, because it will water down and dilute the acids we need to digest the food. So don't drink too much while you're eating. And they do say that warm water is better, although I do like cold water, so kind of goes through faster. So definitely oxygen, just we have to have water to live. We know that, right? We can go without food for a long time. We cannot go without water. So this is, I just wanted to touch on this. A lot of people are going plant-based, they're going, vegetarian, they're kind of backing off of meat, and that's okay, actually. But you just have to be careful that you're getting all the amino acids that you need. So you can do that. So these are building blocks, right? Amino acids, protein, it's building blocks. We need proteins. That's what runs our body, right? Pretty much. So, so plant proteins are not complete proteins, but there's quinoa and buckwheat that are. And so even some of the soy-based protein powders, but we got to be kind of careful with soy. We don't want it GMO, genetically modified. We want it organic. We want a good source. And people that are vegan really kind of need to sometimes do tofu and things like that. So really balance that out. People that are vegetarian or especially vegan, we've got to look for nutrient deficiencies because it happens all the time. Not everybody can be vegan. It can actually harm somebody more. But I also get the idea of not eating animal protein either, So I usually try to get them to eat maybe fish, if they don't want to eat meat. So just something to keep in mind. So these are some really great plant protein. I mean, you can see black-eyed peas have like half your, it's awesome, like 30 to 50 grams a day, let's say. That's like half, So you can really get a lot of protein, and the more diverse, the better. And also these will have fiber. So you get protein and fiber, which are critical. So these are just some ideas. And then this is really awesome. I don't know if you guys heard of nutritional yeast, but if you're a vegan, you will know what it is. It's in all the vegan cheesy products. It is actually a yeast that's non-active, so it doesn't affect the gut like Candida would. And it actually is full of protein, 52% is protein, and it's got all the B vitamins. It's just it's almost like a supplement, but it's a powder and it's very cheesy. I use it in a lot of the vegan stuff I make. Like I make salad dressing with it. I do a great cheese sauce that's vegan. It's just got a great flavor. So this is another way to get some really good nutrients and protein. Just something to keep in mind is you don't want folic acid. You want folate. Folic acid is the synthetic version of the B vitamin, okay? And there's something called MTHFR mutation, and it's quite common. And what happens is your body's methylation process cannot work with folic acid. It actually makes you worse. I used to get headaches when I had folic acid. So it can really affect your methylation process into glutathione and all these nutrients that we need to detox. And so definitely folate. Even in supplements, it's important to have folate. And then B12 methylcobalamin. So there's certain forms that actually get in the body a lot better. Okay, so these are fiber-rich foods. You can see some fruits, some nuts and seeds, and then vegetables, right? So you're gonna get lots of fiber if you just ramp up and maybe do some beans and legumes if you can here and there. You're definitely gonna get your fiber. So I mentioned organic. So EWG.org is a great site. It's a nonprofit. They're out there fighting for us to get this glyphosate and all these toxins out of our food. So there's something called the Dirty Dozen Clean 15. The Dirty Dozen are things you should be buying organic. Okay, these are like the poorest fruits and things like that, the greens, potatoes, okay, and tomatoes, okay. The Clean 15 are things you don't necessarily need to buy organic because they're not sprayed like the Dirty Dozen. And so especially, if we're on a budget or, if it's not available, because sometimes the organic's limited. So you can download this off of that website. So it's kind of cool. I have bought a little card I put in my purse, but I try to pretty much buy everything organic, but there are things like cauliflower is awesome because that's used in a lot of recipes that people are doing now with the paleo and all of that. So great resource. So good fats and bad fat. So this is what I wanted to highlight. So people with, let's say you get cholesterol issues and the doctor says, well, go off red meat. Well, what's interesting is grass-fed red beef is anti-inflammatory. Commercial beef is inflammatory. So you think about grass-fed, even wild-caught fish, there's a huge difference when it comes to grass-fed, organic, that type of thing, or wild-caught versus conventional raised animals. It's night and day. So it's okay to have these things, right? You don't need huge portions either. But I mean, I eat pretty much everything. I haven't done gluten in years, or cow dairy, because those are inflammatory. But I mean, a lot of these things can be really good fats, right? Even coconut oil. People say, well, it's saturated. Well, it's a good saturated. It actually is a medium chain fatty acid that converts to energy. So it can actually help with weight loss. Fats can actually help with weight loss. You know, so don't go fat free. That was actually put on by the sugar industry back in the day. That was where that all came from. So we want to have good fats and fiber. Those are what fill us up and satisfy us. So avocados, olive oil, not for cooking. I use avocado oil for cooking high heat. But olive oil is more like salad dressing, things like that. And ghee is actually a dairy-free butter. It's clarified. So they've taken all the casein, which is the protein that people react to, and it's just fat. Very, very strong flavor. But ghee is actually awesome to use in some recipes where you want a buttery flavor. So butter's not bad for you, but again, grass-fed, right? Organic. Grass-fed organic is pretty much the same thing. So you want to look for those. And then, of course, eggs and, you know, free range, things like that. So it's the type of foods we're buying and how they're processed, how they're treated, makes a huge, huge difference with inflammation. Okay, so I did want to bring up a slide on sugar. So this is wild. We eat 150 pounds of sugar a year compared to 4, right, in the 1800s. So you see where direction we're going. Everything's got sugar. So that's a lot of sugar. The interesting thing is sugar can drop your immune system down up to 50%. So especially during this season, I know we've all had these treats and we've all kind of got off diet a little bit or eaten things we didn't eat before, but just keep in mind that it will deplete your immune system. And that's a critical area we want to have built up right now for sure. So it actually hurts the white blood cells, which are what help fight infection and viruses. So what was the other thing? The candida, sugar feeds cancer cells. We know that. It's just really important to watch the sugar. And then high fructose corn syrup, that's definitely a no, because that is really toxic. And it also has heavy metals. So even children that are getting these candies and treats they're eating, high fructose corn syrup is usually the first ingredients. So try to find things that are fruit sweetened, things like that. So for our kids and grandkids, we want to kind of watch that because that will build up in the system. So also we know sugar affects diabetes and all of that, and that's why we have so much of it in our country right now. So on supplements, this is just for immune health, kind of a dose as well. Probiotics are always important. And then make sure you feed them with prebiotic foods, which are fibers, vegetables, cruciferous like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, fibers that are in the food. That feeds the good guys. So probiotics are usually good to do because you do want to do a variety. I have different ones for different things, but a multivitamin could be a good baseline also. And this is for a time such as this. Vitamin C. So I've been doing 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day. So that's going to ramp up your immune system. And D3. Again, remember, most people are deficient. So if you do one thing, take vitamin D3. So these are therapeutic doses. So this is not long-term. It's fat soluble. It stores in the body. So you have to be really careful. So you need to get D3 tested to see where you're at on the lab. Then you kind of know how you can supplement. So usually a maintenance dose is about 5,000 IUs. I know that the guidelines, it's like 600. It's just super low. And that's not going to bring your numbers up, right? So I'd say maintenance about 5,000 IUs. Get your ranges checked. 50 to 70 is ideal, right? But the lab won't flag you until you're under 30. So you just got to be kind of careful. It's that one range that people miss all the time. So I always ask people, let me see any blood work you've had done, and I double check everything and look at it from a functional view instead of what the FDA is doing and all that. So, okay, so this is just an example. And it's not, I mean, you think about buying nutraceuticals or supplements, you think, oh God, they're expensive. They're not always expensive. There is some stuff that is, but a lot of this kind of stuff is not. This is like 20 bucks. So when you look at a D3, make sure it has K2 or at least vitamin C. You need something to uptake it into the cells. And so I always do the D3 with K2. It's just an awesome combination. It'll get everything into the cell. You can be deficient in the cell, but have too much outside the cell because you're not getting it into the cell. And so got to be careful on that. So again, really good supplement to have. So on my website, I do have an online dispensary. Basically, you set up your own accounts, you shop supplements, and they're all third-party tested. So it's not like going on Amazon where there's no FDA regulation. So, and this is an area too I like to really just talk to somebody through because it's really important. Hi, baby. So anyway, full script. Sorry, my cat's trying to join us. Okay. So how I can help, just really getting to know the whole picture, the whole you. If you work with somebody, you don't want to just work in one area of the body. It's looking at everything that's going on, right? Health history is really important. Symptoms are important to really address. So again, looking at triggers, deficiencies. I have a lab I run on some people that looks for all the nutrients and vitamins, micronutrients, amino acids to see if there's a deficiency in and outside the cells. So if somebody feels like they're not getting anything, they're not feeling like they're getting nutrients from their food, we kind of look at leaky gut, we kind of look at deficiencies, things like that. So I do run labs, I do food panels, the stool test, which is, you know, if somebody's got GI stuff going on, it's super important to look at that. And again, the food too, to have a baseline, right? So lifestyle, journaling, you know, do some journaling, like, you know, kind of keep track and see, you know, for 2 weeks, and then kind of look back and see if you see any patterns, you know, see what kind of, are you not eating a variety? Are you not eating consistent, you know, kind of looking at your lifestyle, your mindset and all of that. Environmental, so I look at the environment, like what are you putting, what deodorant do you use, right? You don't want one with any metals, right? That blocks the lymphatic system and it can tie to breast cancer. It's just, there's little things we can do that add up to big prevention, right? And then supplements, medication review, that's very critical to look at. I have to look at that with people for sure. And then mindset, motivation, of course that's important, right? To be motivated and supported, that's just, it's critical. So finding somebody to help you with that. And then a good foundation or immune system again. And again, this all ties into inflammation. So fixing the gut is key. That's our foundation. And then just identifying goals, identifying, you know, purpose and accountability is really important, you know, and staying true to that, super, super important. So it's my website. So I do have resources, health concerns, blog, recipes. I have programs up there, the online dispensary. I do one-on-one coaching and corporate and group coaching and all of that. So I've been doing this for about 12 years now. I've been in health and wellness for a very long time, you know, and then obviously going through myself, going through all of that. So What I can offer is I always offer a free discovery call. If you just text to my cell and I'll send you a link to my calendar, or it's on my website on the homepage. But it's just a free call to say, hey, I've got this going on and I can give you some insight, maybe some direction, maybe you can ask questions, you know, how you can kind of work towards that, maybe fine tune or prioritize something. So it can be really helpful just to have a discovery call, if anything. So I'm offering that too. And then that's all my contact info. So that's kind of it. That was good timing. Okay, let me go here. Trying to get back to.
All right.
Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay. There we go. Hey, Virginia. Okay. Does anybody
Sandy,
have?
thank you so much.
You're welcome. Welcome. Anybody have questions, comments? Oh, come on, I gotta have one. Can you unmute? Oh, let me see. Sorry, go, Carol. Hi.
Where did you study?
Natural Healing Institute in Encinitas.
Okay, and how long ago did you graduate?
How long ago? 2008, 2009.
And where are you located?
I'm in Carlsbad.
In the village?
I have a home office, so I do virtual, but then I also contract in Orion Wellness. We're off of El Camino Real.
Okay.
And so for the past 8 years, I've been working alongside naturopathic doctors. And so I have access to IV therapy, all kinds of different naturopathic therapies, B12 shots, custom shots, things like that. So it's been good for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're just closed right now, and I'm hoping we're going to open in July. I'm not sure, but been pretty good on virtual. It's been working great. Even with labs, I can order kits and all of that. So it works out. Yeah. Anybody else? Michelle, give me a question.
Well, let's see. So my issue is sugar. I have too much sugar. So my husband was diagnosed with gout, so he's kind of taken out a lot of the corn. So we have a lot more, you know, looking at those different like sugar-free options. But I'm always looking for more ideas because I love sugar.
Yeah.
And anything that tastes sweet. So.
No, I get it. I was a sugar addict as a kid, big time. Sugar is very addictive, as bad as heroin. So it's one of those things you have to kind of ease off of and start replacing with more fiber, more fat, more satisfying. And then, for example, and you can like text me or email me, I'll send you a recipe. I have a paleo chocolate chip recipe. I do like a paleo version of thumbprint cookies. I mean, I'm a snacker. I love that stuff. But you make it with honey, with almond flour, so you have a good, you know, glycemic load that's balanced, right? Doesn't spike. And you still have dark chocolate chips in there. You can put nuts in there. You can add flax. You can do, I play around with recipes, so I try to make them more protein based, but still have that treat and a little sweetness to it. Yeah.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, you can look up paleo recipes and they'll have ketos is a little, it's okay, but paleo is kind of the way to go if you're trying to get off of sugar, because you're still going to have some sweetness in there with honey, you know, things like that, maple syrup. So, yeah. And there's a couple recipes on my website too. You go into resources, there's some recipes, and I think I have one in there with like raw power balls that are awesome. You can do a lot of stuff with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. Awesome.
I have a question, Sandy, if there's time.
Sure.
So let's see, I've been off sugar for years, and I do have candida, and I I don't have very much sugar or starch in my diet, but I'm wondering if I should cut it out completely.
For Candida, I actually have a protocol for that. It is you limit starchy foods for sure. So you do it for 30 days and then you start bringing stuff back in. And then, you know, I don't know if you've done the supplement protocol with that, but there's some stuff you can do for that as well. And Candida is chronic. It comes and goes. And I deal with it too. I know my mom did as well. Now that I look back, she had a lot of GI stuff. But yeah, there's actually a protocol you would do for 30 days. So get in touch with me. I'll turn you on to the diet part. And if you want the supplements, that's helpful too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sandy?
Yes.
You said that you reduce, or the sugar, daily dose for sugar is 25 grams for women? And
Yes,
that does not include fruit?
that's correct.
And so I have a friend that's diabetic, and she's concerned about eating fruit. So
Yeah.
what what would be the recommendations then for somebody that's a diabetic?
I would do, even with Candida, like you don't do fruit for a while, but the fruits are the low glycemic. So when you think about the glycemic index, so the glycemic index is how the sugar spikes in your body. And so the berries and the low glycemic fruits would be best, and vegetables, because some are pretty high in sugar. So they'll spike really, really high. So even with diabetes, you've got to balance that out. And you've got to kind of have protein and fats together so you get that, the glycemic load that doesn't spike in the body. That's the biggest thing. So there is a glycemic list. If you touch base with me, I can send that to you, or you can Google just glycemic index, and it will give you the foods that will kind of give you the, you know, high, medium, low, that kind of thing. And you want to stick to the low.
So is there a recommendation then for the daily amount?
I would probably do half of what, you know, it just depends. It depends on where your blood sugar is at, kind of depends on, it's very individual. Depends on if you're on insulin or not, depends on a lot of things. But what I would say with diabetes is really increase your good fats, your fiber, super important, right? And then just really reduce that sugar as much as possible, right? So, hi, baby. Yeah, but again, diabetes can be very dangerous, you know? So you gotta, it's very individual. You just have to be super careful, especially if they're really high. The blood sugar goes really high. Yeah. You know that, right, Michelle? Yeah. So, and less processed food, whole food, right? Super important. The processed stuff gets us on so many levels. So.
You had said that you have a card for the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. Doesn't that change yearly?
It does. They have a new one out. They have the 2020. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you go ewg.org, you should be able to find the 2021. I think that's what I might have downloaded on the slide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can buy it, like you can donate a little bit and they'll send you a little card and all that too. So yeah, it's a great site. Yeah. Anybody else?
I have another one.
Okay.
I just want to clarify. You had said the best type of beef for anti-inflammatory is organic grass-fed?
Grass-fed, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Organic,
exactly.
both. Organic.
Organic, yeah. So there's organic grass finished, which is the ultimate. My cat's trying, what do you want? Oh my gosh. Yeah, so grass fed.
Okay.
Definitely grass fed. Way, way different. And they always say, like, even go back to like know where you're getting it from, local farmers, you know, that kind of thing where you know how they're raising it. I mean, there's some people that have to know where it's coming from. And sometimes that's probably a good thing, right? To know where our food's coming from. That's why like local farmers markets, things like that are the ultimate, but they can get pretty expensive too.
So is there a source in around the area?
You know what, I think I might have had one on my website. I would Google it. I would just Google it.
Okay.
I don't have anybody at the top of my head. I would say the guys at the farmers markets, their ranches would be local, right? They would be your source. So whether it's Vista Market, Carlsbad, or what have you. Vista Market on Saturdays is awesome. It's huge, really big. So, yeah. Anything else?
Well, what kind of recommendations would you have for someone who, that's someone being me, doesn't exercise regularly? So to slowly kind of get into a routine.
Sure. I would say walk. Are you good with walking? Okay.
Yeah, I live in Las Vegas right now.
Okay,
so
it's hot.
super hot.
Walk at
So,
midnight. Just kidding.
Yeah, so that's the challenge.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm good with walking. It's
Okay.
just when it's not so hot.
Yeah, if you can, or can you get in a pool and do some like swimming and like exercises in the pool? Anything like that?
I don't have access to that right now.
Okay. So yeah, walking in some way at home, you know, doing exercises in your house, online videos, something mellow, like maybe even like restorative yoga kind of stuff where it's like on the floor, it's not going to kill you, you know, especially like I have injuries in my neck and lower back, so I can't do a lot of that stuff, you know, I have to find my happy place on that. But
Yeah.
weights, if you can get access to a sauna, you know, Epsom salt baths are actually also good for detoxing and pulling out toxins. So you could do an Epsom salt bath, really beneficial. It also helps relax, right? So before bed, you know, I'll help. If people have problems sleeping, I'll say, okay, maybe try doing Epsom salt bath with some lavender, you know, and just kind of chill in that for 30 minutes or so. Awesome. That could be helpful. Because really it's about getting toxins out, but you want to also get your heart working. It's a muscle, right? So that's where like walking, whatever you can do in your house, even if it's dancing, you know, anything that kind of gets you moving and gets that energy shifting. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Cool.
All right, Sandi, thanks again for being here with us today. And it's almost time. We have a minute left. If anybody has any other questions for Sandi.
I think there was a couple of questions in the chat. I don't know, Kathy, if you can capture those for me.
Sure.
And then
so
if anybody...
I do have a question. There's one question that says, do you have a supplement or something to heal leaky gut?
Yeah. So basically with leaky gut, collagen's helpful, L-glutamine's helpful, and then diet's critical to clean up. But L-glutamine is actually really good. I have some great powders or supplements on that. But yeah, L-glutamine is really helpful. And then so is collagen for healing the gut. And bone broth, you know, like get some bone broth. Real good bone broth, like the stuff in the freezer, you know, or something really that's not diluted, but get a really good bone broth and drink that. You don't need a lot of it, but drink that. That's helpful too. What else? So nutritional yeast, that was Nancy. Yeah, I'll just email her. She left her email. Okay. Yeah, so nutritional yeast, there's some really, really good recipes for that. The creamy cheese sauce that I've been making and making cauliflower, oh my God, it's so good. And it's basically just nut milk. So I'll use cashew milk or almond milk, and then nutritional yeast and some onion powder. Trying to think of what else I put in there. Oh, a little bit of like tapioca starch or, you know, a gluten-free thickener. And then you just get it in the pan and whisk it, and it's awesome. It's really good. Very cheesy, vegan option. So that's a good one too. I should put that on my website. Yeah. So if you want to, maybe if everybody's okay, get your emails and get them from Kathy. I can do a follow-up and try to maybe attach some recipes and, you know, answer any questions or anything like that that might come up later, or just, you know, jump on a free call and we can chat and I can send emails to you after that as well. So lots of options. There we go.
All right. I'll say thanks again, Sandy, and thank you everybody for coming. And
Yeah,
we
thank
will
you,
see you again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, ladies. Bye. Have a good day.